What to do, my boy? Welcome back to the channel. This is a channel where we talk about self-development for men and attracting girls through the power of authenticity. In this video, we're gonna talk about how to be more interesting. Before we start the video, do the usual due diligence. Grab the subscribe button below because, you know, we talk about all these insane topics that interest you. So when you do that, you're gonna get more material like that. And on top of that, shoot me a like because it really helps me out with these videos. It makes my life easier. Makes the YouTube algorithm actually fucking like me. With that out of the way, let's talk about how to be more interesting. Why do you want to be interesting? Because you want the girls to actually stick around other than like ghosting you or leaving you. You think that if you're more interesting, you're gonna make the girls stick around. You're gonna provide some kind of stimulus for the girls. First caveat, bro. Don't try to be interesting because you want the girls to stick around. Let that sink in. The girls, you wanna have the girls sticking around not because you're interesting, but because you're a fucking boss. Bosses are interesting inherently, but you're not trying to be interesting because of that. I'm gonna drill into this a little bit later in a second, but first I wanna get into this. Being interesting has nothing to do with the feats and achievements you have accumulated in your life. Nothing to do with that, bro. So being interesting is merely how you convey yourself. You can be interesting talking about screwdrivers, and you can be bland and boring as fuck talking about how you were fucking, I don't know, your deployment in Iraq, or how you were skydiving or something like that. It has nothing to do with each other. It's like how you communicate it with what it is. Two different things. Unfortunately, yeah, that's the kind of world we live in, but what are you gonna do? So, how are you gonna be interesting? You wanna be animated about what you're saying. You wanna actually believe, like actually be in the conversation, actually feel it. Actually feel it in that moment, feel what you're saying. If you're passionate about whatever it is that you're saying, and that's, by the way, a reason you're not being interesting, because you're not passionate about whatever it is you're talking about. If you're saying to me how to be interesting, that means you're not currently interesting, and you know this by virtue of girls just ghosting you and leaving you. And the guy that has girls ghosting him is the guy who, when he talks to girls about things that he thinks are interesting to girls, but are not necessarily interesting to him. You see that irony? So you're like putting in all that work to find the topic that you think is interesting to girls. You actually just, introduce it and talk about it. And then because it's not interesting to you, you don't vibe with it. Girls don't vibe with it. And then everybody just bounces. The vibe is gone, man. That's how you're interesting. You choose things that you rep, that represent your vibes, that like, what you think is interesting is interesting. And by virtue of you being interested in it, you talking about it is gonna create that charisma and that engagement on the side of the girls that you want. So, bro, if you are passionate about screwdrivers, if screwdrivers is your business and livelihood, as an example, you own a screwdriver factory, talk about screwdrivers. The way you talk about screwdrivers, man, I promise you nobody does. And I promise you, after that conversation, girls are gonna go to their friends, they're gonna go like, oh my God, we had such an interesting conversation about these screwdrivers, which is like the stupidest thing ever. But it's what you say, what you represent, what you like, you bring that into that conversation and you talk about that, and that's how you're interesting. Simple. Now, another way to do this is by leading. I have a video on leading. I'll just link it, I'll card it up there. One aspect of leading, and that goes hand in hand with charisma and with being interesting, is conversationally leading, which is you choose the topics that you will be introducing and talking about, and you go from one to the next, and it's like, even before you've exhausted the previous topic, you're already jumping on the next one because you introduced it. And when you have that, like a good exercise for that is to have like, 3 or 4 topics prepared, and just prepare the topic. Don't prepare any points to the topic, because then it's like kind of like it gets a little too meticulous, for my taste, and then it will come across inauthentic. But if you can do that for a week, all of your conversations have like 3 or 4 prepared topics that you will go through, and you will lead the conversation from one topic to the next. And when you do that, you will find people engage with it. So introduce the topic of your liking and make sure that you are engaged in it. And by virtue of that, people are gonna be engaged. So this is how you're interesting. It's not about wearing cool clothes or doing cool activities. By all means, fucking actually do that. But that's not what makes you interesting. You can do the cool activities and still be bland as fuck. Don't fret too much about it. Just choose the things that you like. Be passionate about it. Introduce it in conversation. Use the exercise that I gave you, and this is how you're gonna be interesting. This is how people are gonna be sticking onto your every word. And yeah, man, enjoy. If you liked the video, like us and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.